Welcome to the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, psychology student and international best-selling psychology author of over 30 psychology books, bringing you the latest psychology news, fascinating psychology topics and more each week. If you want to learn more, then please check out connorwhiteley.net/books. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube video or follow on your favourite podcast app. And here's the show. Hi everyone and welcome to episode 206 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is on: could AI chatbots be future therapists? And it's Saturday the 27th of May 2023 as I record this. So today's episode is a really fun topic though, because I know in mainstream society and in mainstream universities, artificial intelligence is now a major talking point, and there's definitely a lot of debates about it. I do sort of go into it because I want to address my own personal biases in the content part of today's episode. But this I found a lot of fun. It's really interesting, and I didn't realise I've already done a lot of research on this topic during my academic placement year. So it's really fun, really interesting, and it definitely provides future food for thought, I think, sorry. Because at some point there will be AI therapists. Now, whether this replaces humanity entirely, which I really doubt it will, or whether a more augmented approach is actually needed, is always really interesting to think about. And that's something that we actually talk about in today's episode. So if you're interested in clinical psychology, mental health, and the future of clinical psychology, then definitely keep listening. So moving on to the psychology news section, we're reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest. And the first one, I think's a bit tragic, but I completely understand it because I'm no different and I do fall for this. We are less likely to challenge racism from older people. Every December, jokes about going home and having to put up with the less than progressive views from older family members abound on social media. Whilst flippant, the humour speaks to a wider held belief that older people are less flexible about changing their views than younger people, and that they are more likely to be conservative or express socially unjust sentiments. And to be honest, in my experience, that's completely true. A new study published in Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin suggests that not only do such beliefs lead to a lower level of confrontation when older people espouse anti-black prejudice, but that maintaining these ageist stereotypes could be impeding racial equality. So there's definitely two things I want to address here. I'm absolutely no different, and I do apologise for that. But whenever older members of my family are racist, are homophobic, etc., I just don't challenge it, to be honest. I challenge it at times, and depending on what the conversation before that is, because if we're engaging in a political conversation anyway, then we are already discussing politics and our views, and then yes, I do address it then. But this morning, I was sitting downstairs with members of my family, and a particular member, because we were watching the Sky News Backstage podcast because it covers the week's entertainment. I don't really know why we watch it because we never actually watch anything that they recommend, with only 2 exceptions in the year plus we started watching it every Saturday morning. Well, within reason whenever we're not out. And they were covering the new Little Mermaid movie. Yes, and then the Backstage podcast was talking about the racism that the actress that she plays Ariel has received, and then this family member said, basically endorsed that this black woman had only gotten the job because she was black, and that's the direction that the world's heading there. And then they started saying about, yes, and then they started confusing tons of different issues like homophobia and gender equality. And basically, this family member does not know what they're talking about. But I didn't challenge it because I have to live with them for starters. Secondly, it's just like I sort of want to pick the battles that I choose or that I want to fight, and basically there are certain hills that I want to die on, so to speak. Little Mermaid was sadly not one of them, but I do understand it, and I know that was bad of me. But again, though, I had to live with this person, so that's my excuse. And there are other ways I do challenge this, but we do need to challenge it. And also, I really do agree that this does impede racial equality, simply because we aren't challenging it. We're accepting that. Well, we're sort of accepting that these dudes are okay just because they're being said by the elderly. I don't know, it's a difficult one, but we do need to challenge it, and I think we do need to become better at it. But again, though, this is not a clean-cut topic for the reasons that I've just said. Definitely food for thought. So the second one is, to stimulate curiosity, explain the wider benefits. Okay. We dip into Research Digest archives this week to take a look at how to spread your ideas and interests more effectively. According to recent psychological research, Emma Young digests research in cognition, suggesting that whether big or small, framing new ideas in terms of wider benefits can really get the ball rolling. And that's definitely quite an interesting one. Well, no, because I won't go into politics here, but that's definitely what one political party in like the UK's done, and that's why I actually really like them because they are so positive. Anyway, though, but going on to more like general stuff, this is a like good idea though, because I know that this is how I've actually gotten involved in quite a few different interests. For example, I forget when I was back at school that I was interested in Warhammer 40,000. Now it's just way too expensive. And I don't know if anyone to like play with, so to speak. But anyway, though, like I know that that's when we were doing the Warhammer Club as a part of our like volunteering, that for part of our international baccalaureate requirements. We actually had to, we actually had to like, explain it in terms of the benefits, and that actually got lots of people interested, or at least more inclined to actually listen to us talk about it there. So if you got like an interest, definitely just talk about the like positives and the benefits of it, because it really does work and it really does make people want to listen to you. Personally, I think it's because there's so much negativity in the world that when there isn't a positive person or a group that is only talking about positive stuff, then that's a game changer. And I really, really love that. And the last one that I will cover on the BPS Research Digest is All Eyes on Brighton. Preparations ahead of the 18th European Congress of Psychology are well underway over at The Psychologist. Ahead of the meet from the 3rd to the 6th of July, Anna Voni takes a look at what it means to do psychology in host city Brighton. As an institution heavily founded on understanding the influences of ethnicity, gender, disability, and more, Anna Pears paints a clean picture of Brighton as a place of progress and resilience. And even though I'm actually not going to the European Congress, because I was thinking about it, but I think one of the reasons why I wasn't going is because tickets are expensive. Also, it's in July, it's in that first week of July, and I'm actually starting a project like that week though. But I do understand why they picked Brighton, because in the UK it's definitely known as like I think it's one of the gay capitals, and it's a very progressive city though. As far as I know, I think the member of a parliament is a member of the Green Party, and from time to time I do actually look at Brighton for the news, and they always have some very interesting initiatives there. So it's definitely making good progress. It's definitely a progressive place. So if you're going to the psychology conference, then definitely have fun. I have looked at who's going and some of the talks that are actually going to be given there, and they do sound quite interesting. So I really hope that you enjoy the psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. So we're moving on to the personal update. So because this week actually hasn't involved anything psychology related, because I'm thankfully off of university and I'm just been relaxing, doing other projects preparing for the summer, I'm actually just gonna skip the personal update because there'll be nothing of interest or psychology related for you. So, as always, I always love to hear your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So, you can always email me, connorwiley@connorwiley.net. You can always leave a comment on the show notes at connorwiley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi-wiley. I always love to hear from all of you because it really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And today's episode has been sponsored by Abnormal Psychology, the causes and treatments of depression, anxiety, and more. So the reason why this is a great sponsor for today's episode is because AI chatbots are typically based on cognitive behavioural therapy to treat a wide range of mental health conditions, including depression, anxiety, and a bunch of other ones. And this great, really easy to understand book actually takes you through what is the depression, what are the biological, social, and the cognitive factors that actually cause the oppression and anxiety, and actually looks at a whole bunch of other really interesting mental health conditions like schizophrenia, because that's always a very popular one. Before it goes on to talk about how mental health conditions are actually treated through biological methods, which of course I'm always a bit iffy on, and then afterwards it goes on to talk about psychological therapy and actually apply to a really good introduction at that topic. So if you're looking for a really easy to understand psychology book with a conversational tone, then definitely check out Abnormal Psychology, Causes and Treatments for Depression, Anxiety, and more. Available from all major ebook retailers, and you can order the paperback and hardback version from Amazon, your local bookstore, or local library if you request it. And you can buy the ebook directly from me at payhip.com/conwiley. So, whilst buying books, it helps to sponsor the creation and the editing of the podcast. My time in the creation of the podcast is sponsored by my wonderful patrons. And if you wanted to get access to tons of great benefits, including a closer relationship between you and me as the podcast creator, a special behind the scene access, and early access to blog posts for a couple of euros, dollars, or whatever your currencies are, then you can also become a patron at patreon.com/the Psychology World podcast. So let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So we're moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about, could AI chatbots be future therapists? And this is a great episode that I really love. It's really engaging, and this is a very contemporary topic that we really do need to tackle. Well, to attack that one, but because it's quite a long one, but it's really interesting, I'm actually just going to dive straight into it. Considering the popularity of the topic of artificial intelligence in recent years, because of the release of ChatGPT and other massive language learning models, we need to investigate Could these have any implications for psychologists? To explain simply, this is a massive piece of artificial intelligence that is trained on millions, if not billions, of pieces of conversational text, so the AI knows what to say and how to respond at a given moment, depending on the language input or prompt a user gives it. That is definitely one oversimplified explanation of how the language models these chatbots run off work. Are there signs chatbots are useful in therapy? Before we actually dive into today's episode, I do want to be honest and upfront with all of you, because I do have massive problems with the input of artificial intelligence. I don't have a problem with how artificial intelligence could be used for bad, because anything can be used for bad though, but because you only have to look at the internet, because the internet, it's amazing. I can talk at you, I can run my business off there, I can research stuff in minutes that would normally take me a trip to the library, etc. But the internet can be a horrific place, so we just need to balance that. My problem is a more advanced issue, but that affects me as an author, not as a psychology person. But I won't explore the topic in any depth. Yeah, my problem is how artificial intelligence programs are illegally taking copyrighted works and trained their models on. This is illegal, and if you're interested in finding out more about this, then you can definitely look up the lawsuits that are currently going on, especially in the US, surrounding AI arts, because those are cases some of my problems massively. And those issues have actually been the reason why I've not spoken about this for so long. Anyway, whilst I've learned a lot about mobile mental health apps in recent years, and I've learned a lot about how chatbots are using these apps, I wanted to focus a little more on the research side, since there are early signs that chatbots can be used as psychotherapists. Due to research shows chatbots are promising therapists for certain types of therapy that are structured, skills-based, and concrete. Al-Abarat and all 2019, making chatbots effective for cognitive behavioral therapies, health coaching, as well as dialectical behavioral therapy. And chatbots are effective for getting people to stop smoking, Whittaker and all 2022. And chatbots are being used in almost every single industry on the planet, especially as whenever we go on Amazon, Google, YouTube, etc., we are training artificial intelligence on our preferences. Moreover, and this is something that I've learned when I was investigating mobile mental health apps during my academic placement year, there are apps like robots that use chatbots to help people's mental health that are based, and I do say in air quotes, on cognitive behavioral therapy. So the reason why I say that in air quotes is simply because there's a massive problem with the literature at the moment, that this is not being empirically validated, but this is definitely beyond the scope of this podcast episode. Anyway, chatbots are being used on mobile mental health apps as therapists with some effectiveness, and that's the take-home bit for now. What could the benefit of chatbot therapists be? Personally, I think that's a really interesting question, because a lot of people didn't think there would be any, but let's really think about it. So firstly, chatbots would be absolutely amazing for public health services, because they're cheap, accessible to everyone with a phone, and they're scalable. Since if the chatbots are used correctly, then this can bring mental health services to more people in the comfort of their own home, in their own time. Secondly, a very interesting idea is that chatbots could be used for personalization of therapy, because it's important to know that ChatGPT generates conversations and answers based on what the person inputs, making the chatbot more likely to respond more personally to their client compared to the older, less effective chatbots of previous incarnations. Thirdly, there is an argument that chatbots could help our clients connect to more psychoeducation resources, since the current problem, another thing I say in air quotes, is that if the therapist wants to give a client a particular resource for them to use outside of the therapy session, then the human therapist needs to remember to do that, which when you've got 8 clients back to back all day, is hard. Find the link or the reference, send it to them, and know exactly what resource would be good for that particular client and in that particular moment. Chatbots could connect clients to a particular website, book, or online tool instantly by giving a link the moment they need it. Therefore, clients might be able to get more psychoeducation through chatbots. Finally, and I think this is a very important one because of clinical psychology is the science, chatbots allow therapies to be uniform, standardized, and trackable. This is important because chatbots can deliver a more standardized and a predictable set of responses, allowing researchers to be able to review and analyze these interactions later on. However, I personally think that chatbots will only ever be able to augment psychotherapy alongside a human therapist, because you always need that human interaction. Or do you? What could the limitations and challenges of chatbot therapists be? Firstly, biggest problem, and this is something that I kept finding when I was researching these mobile mental health apps, was retention rates. Due to people are more likely to show up and be accountable to human therapists when compared to chatbots, and user engagement with mental health apps is very, very questionable. Especially as CAD-DAS in all 2022 only found 4% of users continued to use a mental health app after 15 days, and only 3% of their users continued after 30 days. When we consider that CBT typically takes 3 months of weekly sessions to bring about therapeutic change, this is extremely worrying. Secondly, another major problem I found when I was researching these apps was the increasing need for improved data security, privacy, and transparency. These are all very unethical and questionable uses of very sensitive data, because users have no idea how the data and the discussions about extremely personal topics are being used by these massive companies. This is even more alarming when only 2% of mental health apps have research to back up their claims about their effectiveness and user experience. Win 2022. Thirdly, I am strongly against artificial intelligence being used in high-risk cases, because AI augmented with a human oversight is much safer than AI replacement in these kind of situations. These high-risk situations include suicide assessment, crisis management, and other mental health difficulties that would typically be seen by a Tier 4 child and adolescent mental health service in the UK. This is even worse when we consider the open legal and ethical questions surrounding who is liable in the cases of faulty AI, since we have no idea who is responsible if a chatbot therapist fails to assess or manage a mental health crisis, including suicidality. We don't know if a chatbot therapist will alert a human therapist or at least flag them if a client is self-harming or suicidal or poses a risk to others. These questions are important for saving a person's life and the lives of others, and until these questions are ethically and legally answered, then I will always be opposed to AI chatbots being therapists to high-risk clients. Finally, and I feel that this is the most important limitation of all, a chatbot cannot have the same level of empathy required in certain therapeutic situations. Since research shows that even a chatbot that offers a person empathetic language and writes the right words for a person just sometimes isn't enough. You will still always need that human connection in certain emotional situations, like if you're venting to someone or being angry. This might have been shown best in Tassie in all 2021, because these researchers showed when a client was angry, they were less comfortable and satisfied with a chatbot compared to a human. As well as people don't always feel heard or even understood when they don't have a human at the other end of a conversation. The therapeutic alliance might need or depend on the human-to-human connection between the therapist and the client, because the client might want another human to witness their difficulties and suffering. An AI replacement will likely never work in all situations. Conclusion. So personally, forgetting about my copyright problems with artificial intelligence, in the realm of psychology and mental health, I'm not against artificial intelligence being used in therapeutic settings. I think there is a place for it, but chatbots can never and should never replace human therapists, because humans are a social species and we need that social connection in a therapeutic setting. I think chatbots will only ever be able to augment psychotherapy alongside a human therapist, and that's relatively okay. I don't mind that. I just don't think chatbots will ever be able to replace human therapists. And when we consider that depression is one of the most common mental health conditions, and the extremely close relationship between depression and suicide, I don't think chatbots should ever be allowed to replace therapists, just in case suicidal and other high-risk clients slip through the cracks. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode and you got something out of it. I'm really glad that I did this podcast episode at some point, because I have been meaning to do this for a while. And this is such a topical and contemporary debate. This is something that we need to be talking about, because if psychologists don't get involved in this, then other people will make the decisions for us, and that's very, very bad. Because something that I'm didn't include in like the blog post that was that something that I found in this psychology research is that all these mental health apps are being made by big tech companies without psychologists. So all these mental health apps, they just aren't being made with the input of psychologists, which I think is insane. But it's the world we live in, and unless psychologists start speaking up about this, about how wrong this is, then people's mental health will be impacted and helped. Another thing I say in like air quotes, without the input of psychologists. It's mad. It's really interesting, and we're definitely in changing times. So I'm really glad that I did this. I hope you found it useful. If you know anyone who would enjoy today's episode, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word I hear about the podcast. And if you want to know more about the depression and other mental health conditions, then please check out Normal Psychology, the causes and treatments of depression, anxiety, and more. Available from all major ebook retailers, And you can get the paperback hardback from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. And if you wanted to become a patron, then definitely check out patreon.com/The Psychology World Podcast. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on your favourite podcast app. And if you wanted to learn more, then please check out the backlist of the podcast episodes or my books at conwhiteley.net. So have a great day and I'll see you next time.